All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Sure.
I appreciate it. I'm excited to talk to have you on the record today. You have done so many interesting things, from real estate to successful franchise to app. You're just a really unique person in all the business ventures that you've had. And so I'm excited to kind of dive into that today. And we were talking a little bit off camera about the things that were the trials and the difficulties. And I really want to touch on those things today too, when it wasn't going well or when you were living in the apartment with all the other guys. I just think that's such great, it's a great message to everybody. And so you spoke also about your message that you want to put out in the world to people. So I want to get there as well. But I'd love to start back, talk about the early days. What were you doing? What led you to here? What was sort of the first business venture that you were up to prior to the franchise business?
Well, the first venture wasn't necessarily business. I always had a dream to be a paramedic firefighter. I always used to chase the fire trucks around when I was a kid and always curious what was going on. And I've always had a passion for helping people. And so my senior year in high school, I finished some of my classes early and was able to go to Medical College of Ohio, became a paramedic, and started working literally like 5 days after I graduated high school.
Wow, fast.
And so it was great, and it was an awesome career. I did it for 10 years. I went through the cycles of getting promoted from a private ambulance company in Toledo to working for TFD and then Perrysburg City Fire Department. So
Wow.
that was really cool. The only problem with that really is, aside from the stress, is you don't make much money. You work about 72 hours a week, and you might make about $65,000 a year.
Wow, which is that makes me sad, just because those are the people that are risking lives every day. So
yeah. So, but it does give you an opportunity. You work 24 on, 48 off, and so you have an opportunity to kind of get out there and figure out a way to supplement your income. And so at that point in my life, that's all I was trying to do, was just kind of get to that first six-figure mark, and that to me at that time seemed super comfortable.
yeah,
And so, kind of tried a number of different things, got into sales a little bit, like with the home improvement company, and learned a little bit about, how that works, and started to kind of see what investments look like that people were making into their homes, and was fortunate to have my uncle, who owns a commercial real estate company in Ohio, kind of just saw that I was eager and hungry to learn and try new things. So he kind of brought me under his wing and got me involved in commercial real estate, flipping apartment communities.
okay,
So that's kind of how I got my real start, was just really learning, how investments work and what the math looks like and how the formulas, come together to put those deals and make those deals happen.
yeah.
And so that was kind of my first real start, and that probably took me up till about 25. I guess just to keep going.
Well, how did you like that? I mean, talk about that.
I liked it.
Because I know that you were a cop then for a while. So
that was later.
that was later.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah, I liked it. It was fun. I like getting deals done. I like the excitement I like the anxiety of trying to put a deal together when you're just not sure if it's going to pass or fail. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that have to give it a thumbs up, and you're just not sure. And sometimes it can take days. And, but when you finally get to the closing table, it's always exciting. But, leading up to that and trying to find the deals, and just talking to hundreds of people a day, trying to just figure out where your next one's going to come from, just kind of got a little laborious and maybe stagnant for me. So I wanted to diversify a little bit out, and that's what brought me to the pizza franchise.
Okay.
So I had made a little bit of money, working with my uncle, saved everything I made with, working for the fire department.
Yeah.
Of course, now we're forward, probably 6-8 years.
Right.
And so I had some savings, and I wanted to diversify a little bit. There was a building in my hometown that had a restaurant in it, and I thought I could kind of take over this restaurant. It was mismanaged. Our whole niche was mismanaged, distressed properties.
Right. And so had you run restaurants before prior to this?
I had not.
Okay.
So, but I was excited to, because again, my whole thing is, I'm not necessarily a classroom student, but I like to learn new things. And once I've kind of learned something, I got to have a new project.
Right.
And so this was kind of the best mix, because I was going to buy a building that had an opportunity to rehab and put some apartments in the upper units. And then the restaurant was in the lower unit, and I was going to try to pick that up and turn it around.
Okay.
And the long story short is I could never get that deal together with the owner of that building and that restaurant. But through that networking, I met the executives of Marco's Pizza, who at that time were kind of just starting this national expansion of the Marco's brand.
Yeah.
And so they kind of looked at what I was trying to do. They understood, my background in kind of turning around some of these distressed operations.
Sure.
And offered me some Marco's locations in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Went out, visited those stores, and it was way over my head. I'm like, I don't know how to turn around restaurants. I mean, this one would have been interesting because the math made sense because I had the apartment income, and it was just a little bit different. Like, here's all of a sudden 5 stores in a city I don't know, and so I didn't really want to do that. They came back and offered me a developer role within the organization. So there's only 40 guys that were kind of given a piece of the company. And I took East Tennessee, moved out there, and the objective was to sell franchises.
Okay.
And so my title at that time was area developer. And so the way that it works, just for simplicity, is every store that you open, you share in the royalty. So I owned all the royalty rights to the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to sell franchises. What I quickly realized was I had a lot of interest, but I didn't have a product, right? So as soon as somebody said, yeah, we like Marco's, how do we try it? How do we see a location? Yeah. My answer was, well, just fly up to Ohio and check it out. So obviously I wasn't converting a lot of deals.
Yeah.
So at that point in my life, I was like, all right, we got to get serious about this. And I had to kind of create my first location so that I had the showroom, so I had the product. And, started to go down the path. There were about $400,000 to open a location.
Okay.
Try to go down the path of an SBA loan. I'm super ADHD, so putting all the documents together and waiting for the responses kind of didn't suit me. I decided just to take the risk. I was still young enough, so I dumped everything I had into opening the first location, basically opened it with cash.
Wow.
And I solved my problem, right? I now had a showroom, and I could make a pizza for people to try.
What did that feel like when you wrote that check and you dumped everything that you had into that one location? What was going through your head?
It was scary, but I was confident. I thought at that time, like most young people, I kind of knew it all, and I'm like, okay, well, Marco's is great. Everybody's going to love it. It'll take off, and we'll make money. We'll make some money here, and we'll get the franchisees to come, and I'll make it back. So I wasn't too worried about it. But that quickly changed. We running a pizza operation. It's not easy. You have a lot of things that I had never experienced before. All of a sudden, I had 45 employees. I had never paid payroll before. I didn't know what payroll taxes were like. I'd never had to order a food truck. I've never had to do inventory. So, while
a lot
it's easy
of unknown.
It's a lot of fun getting set up. All of a sudden, you have some real responsibilities. And I found myself about 6 months later, $100,000 in debt, about to basically go bankrupt.
Wow.
I had sold or moved out of my apartment, moved in with some Craigslist roommates into a really crappy house.
Wow.
Just trying to make it all work, and of course at that point, you go through all the struggles of now what, what do I do now? And of course it's kind of scary and depressing.
Sure.
But at that point I had the option, I guess, to either, hang it up and start over, move back to Ohio, or figure it out. And so you mentioned kind of the message. I think that the important thing, if you're going to go down a path of entrepreneurship, is to always kind of maximize your relationships with people. As you go through life, you meet a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life who've done a lot of different things. And most people I found are more than happy to, step up and help, anytime they get an opportunity. I think most people inherently are good like that.
Yeah.
And so I got real lucky. I had a guy in my network who ran a retail operation for Marathon Oil, actually, across the entire United States. Came down, spent a week with me every month for the next 6 months, and taught me all there was to know about running, a small business.
Wow.
What I did well was I picked the right location. So thank God for my uncle teaching me how to find good real estate. We had the right spot. Once I learned how to run the operation, we went from red to black overnight, and the game changed.
So before you met this guy that started helping you, do you remember a time, like when was the moment when you said, okay, I could either pack this in and cut my losses and, just go get a job, or continue? Do you remember that time when you decided that?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I had just kind of gone through this phase of selling off everything I had to be able to pay the bills. And, I think my car, I had like a Toyota Avalon. I sold that car for like $7,000 to make a payroll. Wow. And that was it.
So you were literally selling your belongings to pay your employees.
Yeah.
Your personal
and I felt like it was coming together. I mean, I was there 100 hours a week. I mean, I was open to close. I was, wearing all the hats. and it was like I had come too far to turn back. I had to get to the other side. And so, but at that point when I sold the car and made the last payroll, I had basically 2 weeks left because there was nothing else to sell to make the next payroll.
You had no more belongings.
And so that was pretty scary. And again, I got real fortunate to have some people in my life that saw how hard I was working and were willing to kind of step in and help keep us afloat until we got it figured out.
Wow. So the guy that came down and started helping you out, what was like the biggest thing that he told you that really sort of clicked in your head? Were there? I'm assuming there were multiple things that you guys put into place, but was there a major thing that you guys were just doing wrong that he sort of stepped in and fixed for you?
I think the biggest thing for me was learning the difference between being like a manager and being a good leader. So I was going in and I was bossing people around, and I had people in their spots.
Right.
And and I took them through the standard training, but I wasn't motivational. I never really I didn't really understand at that time that these people have to understand that you care about them too. It's not just about your business. It's about why should they work there.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of it, right? Because in a restaurant, labor costs is one of your number one expenses.
Sure.
And if you have, poor quality people or a lot of turnover, you're never going to get that under control.
Yeah.
And, I had people walking out the door every shift, and so
Really?
I had a constant revolving door because I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't nice, all those different things, right?
And they were just upset with you and the company that they would just leave?
Yeah. I mean, I think especially if you're a young person in a minimum wage job,
Sure.
you can go work anywhere. Why am I going to go work for this, guy who's screaming all the time?
Right.
So,
Makes sense.
that's a big thing that Pete taught me is, that the struggles I'm going through aren't their fault, and I can't let that show in the day-to-day operations. And
Right.
So we spent a lot of time on really how to coach people and reward people and recognize people. Recognition, I think, is huge.
Yeah.
And once I kind of learned that, the turnover really started to settle down. People really started to enjoy working there. They took training more seriously. They took our objectives in terms of how quickly we could get pizzas out the door much more seriously. They wanted to be there.
Right.
And so, those expenses started to shrink, and we started to build really good teams. And, from that point on, I ended up with a really solid, team of leaders that, just wanted to be a part of this and wanted to keep growing. And they were with me. They ended up being with me through the whole entire, stint in Tennessee. We opened 7 locations together, and it was awesome.
So you've got your team. It's all set up. Now you're a great leader. You've learned those skills. How did you increase your revenue? What were the things that you were doing to actually bring cash in the door?
Yeah. So again, like what I was saying earlier, I picked the right location, so we had the revenue coming in. The store opened up essentially doing, way in excess of the company averages.
Okay.
And again, I attribute that to nothing more than just right location, got lucky, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So we had the revenue coming in, learning the P&L, managing your expenses, managing your cash flow, understanding how all that kind of stuff works.
Yeah.
That's how we actually started generating, like a real income that we could use to pay our bills.
So a lot of it was just managing the money that you had.
Managing the money that we had.
Wow.
And then it became time to go after like new business. How do we go from, $800,000 a year in revenue to, my goal was 1.6 million. I wanted to double it.
Right.
And then that just, to me, I felt like if I want these people to come and patronize my business, then I need to be giving back to the community. So we got out there, just got heavily involved with all the schools. Every school had, like a Marco's night where if you called in and said your teacher's name, they would get a tally.
Okay.
And whatever teacher had the most amount of tallies, they would get a pizza party, at the end of the month for their class.
Wow.
And 10% of our revenue from all the sales that came in through that program, was donated back to the school. So, like, for instance, one of our biggest schools was Cedar Bluff School District, and we bought whiteboards for all their classrooms from 1st to 3rd grade.
Wow.
And so, like, when that message started to come out, people just wanted to be part of Marco's. And then my mindset became, I want to change the verb, right? I don't want people to say, let's order pizza, or let's have a pizza night, or let's order pizza this weekend. I wanted to say Marco's. Let's order Marco's. Let's have Marco's this weekend. And so, the only way to do that is to build significant top-of-mind awareness. And so we, just kept on that path of sort of becoming a part of everything. And next thing I knew, we were, part of, UT Medical Center. We were part of their Life Flight. We were part of their Trauma Center. We were part of Camp Kiono, which is a camp for special needs kids. We were getting involved in everything we could get involved in, and people just wanted to work with us at that point.
That's so neat. I love the outreach thing, because I think that's something that not enough companies look at, and we've started those talks here even pre-release of our app of, okay, what are we going to do? How do we build this area that we're in? How do we reach out to our community here? And I think that's, it's not a selfish thing. You're really helping the community, but there's such a boomerang effect to that. I mean, it's just, there's so much awareness that comes back to your business out of doing things like that.
Right.
That makes it a really special thing to do, experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the more, if your mindset is focused on what you can do for others and how you can help and be of assistance and use your time to enrich someone else's situation, only good is going to come out of that in whatever form, right? It may be many different forms, but you can't go wrong with that mindset.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've talked about it many times. The creating value for people is what really builds your business.
Right.
Which, interestingly, a lot of people overlook. Like, some people start a company thinking, okay, this is going to pay my bills, or I have this cool widget or gadget. But if you start it with not all the time, obviously, but if you start it with the intention of helping the greatest number of people, actually helping them,
right,
then you're usually in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
So how long did you do that for? So you're up and running, the business is humming. How long until you started nearing the end of that exit?
Yeah, I moved to Tennessee in 2009, end of the year 2009, and we had our, so it took me till probably January to realize that I wasn't going to convert a franchise lead to an actual franchisee until I had a showroom.
Right.
So we kind of switched gears, and I had my first store open by April of 2010.
Okay.
And then we ran that, just looking back on how fast time goes, I guess. It didn't seem like it at that time. But, I mean, I sold in March of 2015. And in that window, we opened 7 locations, created 130 jobs, brought in 2 franchisees.
Wow.
And then I was participating a lot with grand opening marketing. I kind of rewrote that package, on how to launch new stores and new locations. I was traveling around the country, probably opened about 150 stores with franchisees around the United States.
Wow.
And so it just was a lot of fun. And the only reason I got out of it was, we were approached by a franchisee that we brought on. I opened up 2 stores with him. Both of them, wildly exceeded, all of our company records. Of course, he was very excited. He showed that to some financial people on his end. I didn't even really understand how private equity works and things like that at that point in my life.
Right.
But he did, obviously, and he found some backers, and they came in. And originally, we're trying to put together kind of a partnership deal. I think at Marco's, we always had this thing that the most important part about Marco's is an acronym called PSI, stands for Product, Service, Image.
Okay.
And those are the 3 things that you need to really manage in order to have a successful location, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things that impact that. If you scale too quickly, you can't hire people and train them fast enough to output a quality product, right? Your service will start to fail,
right.
And these guys wanted to come in, and they had a lot of money, and they wanted to open up like 11 stores in a year, and it was just crazy. And I'm like, guys, you can't do that. I mean, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to bring you on as a partner, you know, with that plan. And so we kind of turned down the partnership deal, and they came back and said, well, what do you want for it? And so I kind of did a little bit of quick math and gave them a crazy number, and they turned me down. And then about another 6 months went by, and they said, okay, let's do it. And so I wasn't expecting it. I had no plan to really exit Marco's.
Yeah.
I wanted to build it all out. I wanted to get to 22. My contract was 22 locations.
Wow.
But these guys kind of hit me with something that I couldn't turn down, and that was kind of how it came together.
That's so neat. And what was that exit like? I mean, what did that feel like? You said yes. You signed on the dotted line. And then you were,
It was interesting.
You had a ton of cash, and what did that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think how to describe it. I mean, I'm a pretty low-key guy to begin with, so excitement's not one of my big things.
Right.
But obviously, I was pretty excited. But I was also I was happy and sad at the same time, right? Because I love my team, and having to tell my team like, hey, this just kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, for me, it was going on for a year and a half.
Right.
They had no idea. All of a sudden, there's a contract in front of me for a lot of money that I can't pass up.
Yeah.
And so now I'm going to my team and saying, hey, suddenly, here's what's going to happen, and these are the guys that are going to be running it. And so that part was really hard for me. I didn't want to walk away from that. Especially like what I was saying earlier, building teams and really understanding people and trying to be a strong leader and mentor was probably the best part about that thing. So that part was kind of tough.
Yeah.
Obviously, seeing the money hit the bank account was incredible.
Yeah.
That was the first time that I really had real money. I had never really paid myself a lot as I was running Marco's. Obviously, it took me a little bit to come out of my financial ruin.
Sure.
But I didn't want to, take too much out of the company until we were successful and had the right, bottom line. So it was just kind of like a switch flipped. I went from a broke joker to a
To
I guess successful person, overnight. And so that was just weird. And to be honest, I don't know that I've figured out, what that really means. I went out to California and tried to enjoy it. I rented a house for $30,000 a month on the beach in Laguna, and quickly learned.
Did you buy cars and stuff like that?
I bought a car. I bought a Porsche. It was a used one, but it was the model and it was everything I wanted, the color and everything I wanted, and it just seemed like everything I got. It was exciting to get it, but I didn't really care about it. It's like, as soon as you buy a convertible, you realize it's too hot to drive it, and I'm bald, so my head's getting sunburned. So, it's like, I don't really want this car anymore. And then, you can only sit on your deck looking at the ocean
for so
long, and just kind of got bored. And
I think this is such a good point because I have this conversation so many times throughout the week, and we are our most happy during the grind, in the pursuit. And once we actually get it, it's kind of like, all right, well, now what do I do?
Right.
Now what makes me happy? What am I supposed to do now? And everybody thinks that the dream is renting the $30,000 a month house in Laguna Beach and driving around the new 911 and all of that. But it is that, but you still have to be doing hard things every day to enjoy it. Yeah,
you got to keep your mind sharp. I feel like I've kind of, just through the events of my life, conditioned myself to work out of failure. So sitting in a point where there's no stress, just sitting in a chair and you have nothing to worry about sounds incredible.
Yeah.
But I kind of thrive on anxiety. And so without a challenge, it's just not fun.
Yeah. I'm very much the same way. I love being right on the edge of complete chaos.
Yeah.
Right when everything is just nuts and almost too much to handle. That's where I like to live my life.
Yep.
Which I think to a lot of people is crazy. But I love it. Okay, so you sell the business, you're in Laguna Beach, you're living it up, you're a rich guy now. What do you do after that? When do you decide, okay, I got to go do something else now?
It took, like I said, it didn't take long before I got bored. I was probably 3 months into it and, wanted to kind of get back to work. And I was 32. I had no business sitting around. Yeah. So, but
which, by the way, all these people out there saying retire by 30, 35, that's sort of a terrible life, it seems.
I don't know if it's a terrible life. It's like what you just said. Everybody's different. I have a friend who, his whole goal in life was to get to $80,000 a year so he could be home by 4, sitting in his recliner with a cocktail and no stress and just live this modest, easy life. And he's happier than anybody I've ever met.
Wow.
Nothing to me sounds worse than that. But, we're all different, and it's okay. Whatever your thing is okay.
Right. Okay. All right, so you get bored.
So I was just trying to figure out how to get back to work. At that point, I wasn't really ready to, get into a full-on massive scale project and go all the way back to the anxiety of, what do I do? So real estate was kind of like the natural fit. I just kind of went back to my roots. I like real estate. I know real estate. Yeah. I was in California, so I'm like, I'm just going to get my real estate license and give that a go out here. And kind of started to realize once I got my license, like, this is probably one of the worst jobs ever, real estate. Like it seems like it's great, and it's just like anything else. You see stuff on TV or Instagram or whatever it is, and you get these people making big checks and hanging out, seeing all these awesome properties.
Yeah.
And then you get your real estate license, and the joke in California is that more people have a real estate license than a driver's license. So it just becomes this crazy rat race.
Very saturated.
Very, very saturated. I mean, I think there's like 300,000 real estate agents across California. Wow. Just Orange County where I was, there was like 130,000.
Wow.
So like 70, 80% of those people are all in the same boat I'm in, right? They just got their license. They think they're going to make it big. And they're all doing all these antiquated, techniques to try to drum up business. Sure. And what frustrated me the most is like you go to these brokerages and they all tell you the same thing. Like you want to start farming neighborhoods, which means literally knocking on doors and passing out mailers. And you want to start cold calling, expired listings, and then tap your sphere of influence, which I hate. Like I think that's the craziest thing in the world. Take somebody who has no idea what they're doing, get your family involved with you, and get them a terrible real estate deal.
Yeah. Why would you do that? Especially to the ones that you're closest to.
Yeah, I mean, it's just awful. And, like the thing about real estate is most people don't know any better, right? So you don't know if you're getting a good deal or a bad deal. You don't know all the different ins and outs of the contract and where you can, where you can win and where you can lose big. Yeah. And so I just didn't like any of that. And so I quickly realized I didn't want to be a realtor, but still was kind of unsure as to what I wanted to do. Yeah. But started thinking about, well, how can I fix this, right? Because there's a big segment of people who are really trying to make it. Yeah. Probably never will because it's just too competitive, it's too saturated, and the technology is too antiquated. Yeah. To make it work. Sure. And so that's kind of what took me to where we are now with trying to create this app.
Okay. So that's so good. It's such an interesting journey. I love it when people do multiple things over their life, not just one thing, but they do many things. And there's failures and successes. I think that teaches people so much. So talk about the app. So tell us about that and kind of where you are now and the process of starting that and what the idea was and as much as you can talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind sharing the story so far. I mean, everything kind of just snowballed, right? I had no idea that I would be creating an app, 3 years ago, I guess, is when we started kind of thinking about it.
Sure.
Actually, May of 19 is when I created the LLC. So prior to that, I was kind of just writing a business plan. As I was kind of learning, I mean, I kept working as an agent, and I was lucky enough to get a few deals done in California. Yeah. And so not only was I able to see kind of like firsthand what it's like to be a brand new agent, but then, learn what it's like to actually do deals. And, it's scary to do, especially a multi-million-dollar deal, when you've never really, learned a contract.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what happens every day is these new agents just, kind of, a deal falls in their lap. They got a contract in front of them, 16 pages of stuff they've never read.
Sure.
And so there's just like all those kinds of things, that I was kind of able to learn. I just started writing into a business plan in terms of like, well, how do I solve this? How do I solve, for agents, right? And then, you start to learn from your clients. Well, gosh, it took 3 days to be able to schedule a showing of this property. And in California, properties don't stay on market that long. Average days on market is 4.5 days. So if you lost 3 of them, chances are you're not going to get that house.
Right.
And on multiple occasions, we would see a property hit the market, and by the time we would get there to go do a showing, it was already under contract. And so I want to try to solve that for buyers. And then, of course, you have other segments of the country, like, Dallas right now, or a lot of places where days on market, can exceed 30. And it's like, well, how do I just get people in here and seeing these houses? Yeah. And I just kept writing ideas, and that kind of turned into a business plan. And then I showed that to a few people, and they're like, well, you should start a company and do it. So I created an LLC. And then I'm like, well, how do I take the business plan and turn it into a, something we can visualize? Right. And just research a little bit and like, okay, well, I guess I have to find a UX designer, whatever the heck that is. Yeah. And learn what these guys do. And I thought it was this big, complicated process. It was going to be super expensive. And I get this guy on the phone. I'm telling him what I want to do. And he's like, oh, yeah, I can have that done in a couple days. I'm like, all right.
You're great. Going, okay, yeah, sure, we'll see.
Yeah, and he did. I mean, he put this thing together. And, of course, there's a little bit of back and forth just getting the look and feel right. But, there's programs out there now that make it so simple.
So simple.
That literally within a few days, he had what was in my mind on a screen actually kind of functioning. Not like a real app.
Sure. But it was in this prototype.
In this prototype environment.
Yeah. That I remember with us in the early days, too, that was so exciting. To actually see what I had in my head, I could click on buttons
Yeah.
and watch it actually work.
It
Again,
is.
not coded, but actually function was such a prideful thing to be able to see that. It was really neat.
It's a neat experience, and I mean, the way I describe it is like, it's just a snowball effect, right? If you just kind of keep following your ideas,
Yeah.
you know, if that's what you're interested in, you're passionate about,
Sure.
then it will keep formulating, and it'll
Yeah.
keep growing, and it'll keep becoming something.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we got the prototype built, and it was pretty cool, and I started showing the prototype to people, and they're like, well, how do I get involved with that? I want to be a part of your company.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm like, gosh, I never thought about that either, you know, but it wouldn't hurt to have some people kick in some cash if they want to. And
Yeah.
so, you know, we showed it to a few people, got a few backers behind us, and then we took it from prototype to actually hiring developers, which, again, I had never done before.
Yeah.
Of course, it's terrifying. You know, like,
And
you have
it's
to learn a
much
new
harder
language.
than people think.
If you've ever taken like a Spanish class or French or whatever in school and you think that's tough, like, try learning how to talk to a developer.
Yeah. It's really
It's a whole language.
it's really difficult.
And it's not as easy. I mean, it was so easy to get the prototype done. I'm like, okay, I'll just hire these developers. And next thing I know, I'll have an app.
Yep.
And, you know, my timeline was a few months.
Yep.
And, you know, now we're at the end of the year, you know, we're essentially 12 months into this, and we're still working on it, you know.
Yeah.
But I think that's all part of it.
Yeah. It's amazing to me how difficult it's been. I mean, we have two great developers at HiredUp, but we're still looking for we're actively looking for another one right now. We need them quick. And it's so difficult to find somebody that wants to make a big change. They all demand an unbelievable amount of money, and a lot of them are happy where they are.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. I mean, being able to intelligently communicate with those people and actually explain to them what you want, and then also to vet them. That's the hardest part. That's been the biggest learning curve for me, is just, how do I know that this person actually knows what they're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, I have to go and learn a lot of this lingo to actually understand if they're just BSing me, or if they're being truthful, or if they even know what they're talking about.
Right. And that was one of my mistakes too. I mean, I kind of got a little out ahead of my skis, and you know, I didn't necessarily learn the language, and these guys talked a big game, thought it was going to be great, brought them on, paid them their fees.
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't the greatest scenario, you know, and so we had to kind of pivot from that and find better ways to do it. But, you know, you learn from everything that you do, and so now I know how to vet, you know, a developer, and you can sit there and think, God, I wish I would have known that before I burned some cash on them, but, you know, it's just all part of it. You know, if it were easy, everybody would be a billionaire.
Yeah.
And, you know, so, but, yeah.
It's true. So, and talk about I'm curious about one of the things that we speak about a lot inside the company, obviously, is how do we convert these users? How do we actually, you know, if we're in front of them, however we get in front of them, how do we actually make them download this app? And then how do we get them addicted to it, to use it all the time?
Yeah, I mean, if I knew the answer to that,
Right.
you know, this podcast would be worth a lot of money.
Yeah,
you know,
true.
I think there's just a little bit of, well, number one, I think you have to make sure you have product market fit. You know, that's something that I'm learning right now, is I believe that the number one frustration, you know, really occurred between buyers and agents, where new buyers just want to get out and see properties, and agents are all desperate for listings.
Yeah.
And I believe that was the biggest pain point. And as we kind of built that out and put it to the marketplace, you know, we kind of learned that, like, you know, yeah, that might be true in Orange County, Newport Beach, you know, where properties are going in a minute.
Right.
But everywhere else, people are okay to wait, and they don't necessarily want the anxiety of trying to connect instantly with somebody. And
Sure.
And then we were finding, well, once they pair with an agent, if they like that agent, they're not coming back to our app. And so maybe that wasn't the most, you know, crucial pain point. So,
Right.
you know, we're kind of looking at, you know, what is our true product market fit.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about real estate, I think the blessing in disguise is that there's so much wrong with the industry, is that, you know, we'll find it.
Right.
But, you know, again, what I had lacked at the beginning was, you know, a very diligent, thoughtful process on identifying true market fit. And so now we're back at the drawing board, and we're doing real studies and capturing analytics on what do people really want.
Sure.
You know, and we're finding that, like, contracts are actually scarier than losing a property that you love. right? Understanding what's happening in the contract and where am I in my timeline from we're under contract to is this thing going to close? Because as soon as you get under contract, that's when the anxiety kicks in for the clients.
Right.
Who's gonna fall out of this deal, and why is it not going to happen? That's all anybody thinks, literally until the minute that it closes.
Right.
And there's no systems that really show you where you're at and how it's going to play out. And so that's something that we're looking at, in terms of how we can kind of assist everybody in the process.
Right. So okay, and so what's the status right now? What are you guys doing now?
So, I guess this is the part, like if I were to, compare it to Marco's, this is the part where I'm living with the Craigslist roommates.
Okay.
I don't know what the answer is. I've spent a bunch of money. We did a soft launch, didn't go well. So we're kind of back to the drawing board. I think our product is great. We learned a lot. So there's a lot of, really great things that have happened. But I'm at that point where I'm trying to tap my resources, and I'm trying to find people that have done this before, and I'm trying to grow my network of real estate enthusiasts and people that have better experience and more experience than I.
Yeah.
And and we're going to figure out how to pull out of it, but we're definitely in a valley, in terms of how this thing goes, and that's how it goes. I think for everybody, but that's where we're at right now. We've rolled back our launch. We're going to create some new stuff. We're going to look at some new studies in terms of product market fit and how we want to take that back to market. Not sure when it's going to happen, but I think it's all good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think what's neat, honestly, is that this is not an unknown territory for you. What you're doing right now is unknown with the app, yes, but being in a situation where it's kind of this wave. You're comfortable here.
Right.
You've experienced this many times before.
I had to get myself to the point of extreme anxiety in order to successfully get myself out of it. If it were easy, I'd be no good.
Exactly. Wow. Okay. And so I had this conversation this morning with somebody because there have been a few, pieces of content and video I've put out about here's how to start an app, and here's what we did, step one. And then I started thinking about that and going, well, that's sort of just wasted space because the odds of anybody actually trying to do this for themselves is so slim. No one's going to go start an app that I'm talking to out there. Maybe like one over the course of a lifetime.
Right.
But I think, we share that understanding of it's really, really difficult. Like with all the apps that come out every single day, making one that's really good, that works perfectly 100% of the time. I mean, I have such a new respect now when I'm on an app and it crashes.
Yeah.
I sort of just go, okay, I get that. That's okay.
Somebody's upset somewhere right now because they just got a notification and their app's not working.
Yep, exactly. And I used to get so frustrated by that, but now I have some empathy for that. But I think you'd agree that it's much harder than people think, and it's harder than if I were to go start a simple service business. If I was doing power washing or mobile car washes or something like that. Trying to get a huge number of people to adopt something that they've never done before and with a product they've never seen before, and then to get a whole team of people to climb up that mountain with you without knowing what's on the other side is very, very difficult. It's a lot of fun, but don't be fooled. It's very hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that by and large, people who do go down this path probably create really interesting stuff. But if there's not a market for it, or if they haven't, really captured what, the users want, then it's never going to go anywhere. And I mean, you sent me that article on Instagram, where it started off with a different name, and it had a whole bunch of bells and whistles. And the guy launched it and wasn't really getting much traction. And the short version of the story is he's on vacation with his girlfriend. And she was taking pictures, and he said, well, how come you're not using my app? And she said, well, the clarity's not that great. All I want to do is post great pictures.
Yeah.
And so he ripped all the, fancy stuff out of the app and just made it an app where you could share, high quality, great pictures of the things that you're up to. And Instagram was formed, right? And they went from 0 to 25,000 followers basically overnight, and it just kept growing from there. And so you just, The thing is, you have to keep at it. You got to figure out what that niche is going to be. And, I don't think that it's just, well, how do I market this thing?
Right.
You can't spend enough money to get people to use your app. You have to create something that people want to use, and it will take off.
100%.
And that's the hard part. That's figuring out what that is the make or break.
Yeah. 100%. And I also think there's a lot of people out there that they create a product and they go looking for a solution. They create a solution and they go looking for a problem.
Right.
So there's all these cool gadgets and widgets, and I heard about this from a friend of mine that he wanted to invest in a VR company. And everything about it was just too complicated. Just their service created more complexity, and it added all this, just stuff to a space that really didn't need it. And what I see out there is that the people who are doing really well, and the app companies that do really well, or the tech companies or the service businesses that really crush it, are the ones that subtract complexity from a space. Mm-hmm. They remove difficulty out of your life.
Right.
They don't add stuff to it. They don't add widgets and features and all this stuff. They make it so much more simple by removing all these things. It's exactly what you just said from that article on Instagram. Instead of adding all of these cool, unique features, Kevin stripped down what was already out there and made it the most simple thing ever, which in reality is what people wanted.
Right.
So I think that's a little bit of a big part of the dance of getting into the tech world is, creating something that's not actually an addition to everybody's life. It's actually a subtraction of a lot of complexity with a tool that is stupidly simple to use.
Yeah, I think people definitely want stuff that's easy, that creates a significant convenience in their life, that provides some level of entertainment and distraction. I think that we're now a society that thrives on distraction, and so if there's things that they can use to take their mind off something else, and it's very, very simple, and anybody can use it, and you can get, addicted to likes or whatever it is. Those are all reasons why that particular app I think is so successful. But one thing that I think is also important is I'm just this is just my opinion,
sure,
just personal opinion, but nobody goes into something. We all want it to be wildly successful, right? Everybody wants this thing to blow up and be the next person sitting on, the stage talking about your awesome story on how you, went IPO and hit 100 billion overnight. But,
right.
How people get there is different from everyone. And you can read all these stories about what this guy did or that guy did, but that doesn't mean that that's what's going to work for you. I think you have to take that stuff, internalize it, use it as a motivator. Some of it's going to stick, some of it's not. Yeah. But the thing is, you have to stay focused on, what is your product and why is it something that everyone needs? And until you can really answer that question, you got to keep working on it.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. And the path of every company and every person is so different.
Yeah.
So different. What would you say to the person that is out there living in the apartment with the Craigslist roommates that you talked about that you were doing, and the business is failing, or maybe they haven't even started it yet and they have no money, and they're at that point, they're at the fork in the road, or they can either keep going or they can pack it in and just go do something that makes more sense? What do you tell that person, having been there before?
That's a really good question. I think that you have to really, at that stage, you have to really understand what it means to be an entrepreneur. And I'll quote a guy that you and I both know, Jay Rogers, at Biz Owners Ed. He stood up and said, and I might be getting this a little bit wrong, but something to the effect of, if you're wired to be an entrepreneur, it'll be the greatest thing ever. If you're not, it can ruin your life. Yeah. And so I think if you're at that point, you need to really take a hard look in the mirror and understand if this is what you want. Because if you're not wired to be an entrepreneur and you don't know what you're doing, you don't have the network, and you're not willing to live in that world of chaos, then, get out and recover while you still can.
Yeah.
If you are wired for it and you're ready to endure the Craigslist roommates, which was awful, and you're ready to, be the guy who opens the store in the morning and is mopping the floors at night, and you're willing to put in that, that work, then go for it, And I think, it's like we've all heard the quote, the harder I work, the luckier I get. If you keep at something long enough, you'll get there. But you have to be wired for it, and you have to want it.
That's great advice. That's great advice. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah, I would say.
I think there's a lot of people that want to do it, but they don't really know what goes into that life. They may not want
and
that
I think,
life.
yeah, I think there's a lot of, so a entrepreneur from my perspective would be somebody who probably has a good idea, but is too scared to run it down,
Yeah.
and that's a sad thing, because there's probably a lot of really smart, interesting ideas out there, and we are living in a world now where it's not super complicated or expensive to flush something out,
Right.
I think you need to read the books on how to flush it out and make sure that you have the right fits and things like that. But, that's the sad thing is people who just never give it a shot.
Yeah.
I'm not saying take yourself into financial ruin, but don't just sit on a great idea.
Yeah. And then don't be upset when somebody else does it and you tell everybody, I had that idea.
Yeah.
And I should have done it. I could have been a billionaire.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What are a few books that you'd tell people to read? Maybe books that have been impactful for you.
So there's a great book that's called I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's called the Oz Principle. Okay, so it has 4 different principles. It's all about leadership, and really how these 4 different quadrants, really are kind of a game changer. It's see it, solve it, own it, and believe it.
Okay.
And you want to train your teams, to think about things in those 4 quadrants, right? So if you see it, then how are you going to solve it, right? And if you have the solve, then you need to own it. And if you're going to own it, then you have to do it. And so it's a great book if you want to learn how to train your teams.
Okay.
Another great book, I'm just drawing a blank on the name. I gave you a copy of it with the red cover.
I don't remember.
Let me think of it for just a second. It's frustrating that I can't think of it because it's such a great book. The reason I love it is because
we'll put it in the show notes so everybody can see it.
Yeah, it's written in terms of a story, and it's this businessman who's trying to go on this sales call, and it talks about how he's gone through all this sales training, and he's going to go out and he's going to close this big account, and the prospect is this millionaire, and the only way you could reach him is to go out to his house, and his driveway was so long that a Rolls Royce picks you up at the gate and drives you up, and it's just this really interesting story, right? It's not like a textbook kind of thing. It's an actual story. And then, the way that I don't want to ruin the book, but the guy learns this incredible lesson about, how you need to look at sales and why like we were talking earlier, why what you're offering brings so much value that this guy can't live without it.
Yeah.
And then, once you've kind of learned that, how you can use what you're doing to change people's lives. And that's why I really love that book. And I don't know why I can't think of the title. That kills me, but
We'll find it. We'll put it in the notes. Okay.
And then just for anybody kind of looking at starting a business, there's a book called the Lean Startup.
Yep. Great book.
And it's a great book.
Great book.
That was one of the first ones I read. It's got everything in there from product market fit to finding funding to learning convertible notes, how to get that stuff in front of people, talk to investors. Really a good guide to kind of at least get your feet wet.
That's great. Well, good. Well, this has been awesome. We've got to do some more of these. I think there's a lot of things we can unpack here. But I so appreciate it. I appreciate you, and thank you for doing this and taking the time. And I know people are going to find a lot of value out of these things and out of your stories.
Well, thanks for having me on. I love your podcast, and it's always fun to kind of tell stories. So happy to come back anytime.
Sounds great. Well, thanks so much.
All right.